On this episode of the show, I have with me Soham Mazumdar. He is CEO and co-founder at Wisdom AI, and we're going to be talking about, well, starting up again after a big exit, and a lot of things that are going to go into that is the experience that you gain. Does it apply to the next startup? How do you actually pattern match? Should you not pattern match? And a lot of the pressures after you have an exit, whether it's big or small, expectations change for yourself, maybe for investors, and we'll talk to Soham about a little bit in those areas as well. And also, the drive to do it again. I mean, sometimes you don't have to, but many serial founders keep wanting to do another one, and we'll find out what makes Soham so interested in doing it again. So Soham, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Amir, for having me.
Absolutely. All right, before we start, can you tell everyone what Wisdom AI does?
Yeah, so we are a post-chat GPT company, as I like to put it. We're trying to transform how analytics is done in organizations. What we do is that we enable data teams to train virtual data analysts, which have the ability to essentially automatically perform a whole bunch of data analysis related tasks and also provide self-service capabilities to the broader organization.
Love it. Great space, and could probably spend a whole show talking about that, but maybe a different day. This episode, obviously, we'll be talking a little bit about that notion of being a serial entrepreneur and kind of using that experience and what happens when you do this again. I normally don't do bios in the show, but in this case, when we talk about someone who's a repeat founder, it's always good to provide some context. So maybe if you could just give us a little sense of the companies you started, as a co-founder, and then kind of what happened to those startups,
Mhm.
and we'll jump
Yeah,
to them now.
yeah. So this is technically startup number three. First was a short one, 2 year period doing tactile. We're trying to do mobile loyalty way back when, 2010. That led me to that company got eventually acquired by Facebook. But the second one, which was Rubric, I think that's been you know pretty significant success. We started in 2014, and it went public last year. So kind of spent like a good decade of my life working there. Wisdom AI was something that in some ways, interesting confluence of events. Saw a whole bunch of like challenges in terms of like scaling Rubric, and around towards the end of 2022, when LLMs were just starting to make their appearance, just realized that there was just like an immense, tremendous opportunity, and just fundamentally redoing how analytics could be done in an organization. So felt compelled to take the plunge for one more round.
Here we
Um,
go.
yeah.
I guess compelled to take the plunge, saw the opportunity. I guess maybe I mentioned a little outline we're going to follow. I'm actually going to go to the end first. Obviously you had a successful exit to Facebook, Rubric. People can follow the story now. It's a public company. You start startup three. What is the drive for you to keep finding and new problems to solve and being a founder? What is it that makes that interesting to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know an engineer or a builder at heart, although I don't write code anymore. Um, so, I mean, fundamentally, problem solving is something that I find exciting, and I get excited by ideas all the time. So even when somebody comes and pitches some startup idea, my first instinct is, okay, great, you should do it. Um, so that's one. That's just like an innate desire in my mind that I have. The second is, I mean, it's just like this moment just felt, it's quite unreal, honestly. Like in my entire career, entire life, I've actually never felt this kind of, giddy excitement at what is just possible with tech, right? And so I could not like really help myself in this case, in taking the plunge again. And like I don't know, if I didn't do this, what else would I do? I mean, this is like such the only thing that I, this and my family. So those are like the two things, and this is what I enjoy doing. So I'm doing it.
I love it. That's very good. I guess when you go through the process of multiple exits, I mean, you mentioned you touched on it, trying to address some of the things that you saw with Rubric and some of the scaling issues, applying it to a new challenge. When you look back and you're now in Wisdom for a couple of years and you started it back, you mentioned 2023. When you start the company, how much of that previous experience and what of that previous experience do you want to carry through into a new startup?
Okay, so first of all, I mean, it's I will admit that there are lots of benefits to being a repeat founder than the first time, and the main benefit is that you have a certain reputation, which helps you attract talent, which helps you with investors, helps you getting started with your first set of customer conversations. So there is a big scheme of things. There is a lot that you take from the previous one that immediately starts helping you the next innings, so to speak. And then like all the learnings about like how do you build the different functions, how do you think about all sorts of like go-to-market strategies, team building strategies. Um, s- there is just like tremendous learnings, honestly, that you carry forward from one to the other. Um, the one place where I think the biggest like cautionary thing is, like you need like a beginner's mindset when you're kind of starting anything new. And so this whole like pattern matching, which you're sort of like oriented towards doing, can absolutely come in the way. In fact, like the whole act of like creating a startup is, you think there is an opportunity, nobody else is doing it, or the way it has been done in the past doesn't quite work. So I mean, the whole existence of a startup in some ways like saying that the patterns of the past did not work, right? Yet when you kind of go about executing it, you're trying to pattern match to how that previous company worked. So I think that is like this little, I would say, disconnect between just the philosophy of a startup and then you as an individual always trying to pattern match. And this can kind of it can certainly harm you because you ultimately every company is unique, right? Every problem statement is unique. The go to market is, there is always something that is very unique. The environment or the ecosystem that you're within is going to be unique. The technical problems you're solving, there is something unique about it. So I think the like going in with this like super fresh mind, keep that beginner's mindset of like, okay, I don't know, I'm going to figure it out. If you don't take that approach, you are definitely going to kind of get into dead ends. And this is a, I personally believe this at frankly every level in a company, that anytime you change environments, you must approach it with a fresh mind. You must have the intellectual honesty that I need to study this and then figure out what's the right thing to do. And in fact, like like pattern matching is a great place to start. But then if your pattern is not matching, then you should have the intellectual honesty to say, okay, that did not work, I should change that. So again, there are great pros and things that you need to watch out for.
Do you find I guess you mentioned, experience wants you to repeat things you've done. As humans, we love to pattern match. We love to use those reference frameworks. We like to look back and go, well, this worked, I'm going to try it again. And I think it's easy to say, try not to. I think that's actually, I think it's really hard to actually not to, because we are all creatures of habit. We fall into things that we're very comfortable with and all those thought processes. For yourself, being the third company, how do you actually manage that mindset so that you actually don't accidentally slip into trying to pattern match? Or when you see a scenario, start thinking, how did I solve this? Or maybe it's okay to frame it with previous experience, but obviously, as you mentioned, the dynamics are different, the timing's different, the product's different, the customers are different, the team is different. I mean, there's so many things that are different that sometimes, as you're speaking, I'm like, yeah, how can you really pattern match when 90 some percent of every variable is different?
Yeah. I mean, the one place where you can absolutely pattern match is people. I think you always want to work with amazing folks, and I've been very lucky. And in fact, like all of my career, I have had the opportunity to work with amazing folks, and this has continued. My co-founders are incredible. The set of people who started with us early on, I think that's an invariant. Every great company has that. Beyond that, I would say the way pattern matching fails is it's kind of like the school of hard knocks. You follow that pattern and then you say, all right, hence I should do this. The great thing about like startups, especially in the early stage, is that you keep getting feedback. So you think this is the customer I should be trying to target, and once you speak with like 20 of them, you will learn whether that was correct or not. Same thing, like you think this is how I don't know, pick at it, like, I mean, this is how the marketing should be done, and you will get feedback very quickly whether it's working or not, because I mean, there are metrics that kind of you get to see immediately, both again quantitatively and also qualitatively. So in some ways, I think uh, the urge to pattern match sort of gets uh, course corrected. At least there are enough opportunities to course correct, because you will learn that things are not working. So as long as you kind of keep that eyes open, and willing to make changes, you are going to be okay. It's the ones which kind of like hold on to a pattern for too long. I think that's where the problem is. And like one of the biggest success strengths of a startup is to be super nimble, agile. As long as you have that ability, I think you can navigate this.
Absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned obviously feedback. A lot of founders talk about talk to customers, take the feedback on. It is sometimes hard to see the trees through the forest when you're deep in it and you live and breathe something. When you get feedback, to actually sometimes see the value of that feedback is a challenge.
Mm.
And I mean, you just mentioned pattern matching in some areas not as useful, feedback exceptionally useful. I've heard that from many founder. When you look at feedback and you try to onboard that feedback and you try to be nimble, I think there's almost a risk of two things happening. One, you over-index on the feedback and you make too big adjustments, and all of a sudden you haven't addressed the real true problems. And the second one is you might take the feedback on and you actually think, you know what, that's just an outlier. I'm not actually really concerned with that particular thing. Feedback itself, I mean, this is actually just daily lives even. I mean, not even as a founder, but when you get feedback as a founder, how do you start identifying what needs to be listened to and actually bringing that back into the company for change? Because obviously you don't want thrash either with the feedback.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, feedback you can get whiplash, and then you're essentially you are spinning and you are making your team make wild oscillations. Um, I think, yeah, I mean, it needs a bit of, uh, what would I call it, intellectual rigor to work through like feedback, right? You, the whole goal when you're kind of giving feedback is kind of try to think the abstract out. Okay, why is this kind of feedback coming in? But I think it's less about like here is the specific feedback. It is a lot more about my or organization from a customer or from a prospect. It's going to be okay. In this organization, the setup is X, Y, and Z, and hence we are not a fit. But hence there is some competitive product that just works way better. So if you can kind of like identify what is it about this organization that makes you not a fit? Is that like a pattern that's going to be more common than not? uh, like, is this like an unusual organization, or is like our product not shaped exactly right to kind of be a fit? So you have to kind of like really take the objective feedback and then kind of elevate it and see what is a pattern that I can draw, and does this pattern in fact hold true? If there is one piece of feedback that I got, is it getting repeated? Is it like, everybody's saying the same, that like, five people are saying the same thing, or is it like, literally just one? So I think like, so you're kind of like doing this constantly, which is like, don't react on one piece of feedback. Try to see if there is like a clear pattern that is coming out, trying to understand where this feedback is coming from. Is there like some other motivation, other situational thing that's kind of leading to it? So I think like you have to analyze the feedback that's coming in, and you in fact kind of, honestly, you do that all the time, right? Anytime you're having a conversation with any person, uh, there is like a there are the words that they're saying, but there is something behind the scenes that is like leading them to say those words. uh, and you are also like, I don't know, even if I'm having a conversation with my wife, there is always like a there is a thought behind the thought that's kind of, you're always trying to kind of get at. So I think that's kind of what you need to do, right? You have to kind of critically analyze the feedback, trying to not go by a single feedback, look broader. Ultimately, like as a founder, sort of the buck sort of stops with you. So you cannot say, you cannot just be jerking people around because this is like probably bad for the company. On the other hand, sometimes the feedback does mean that you have to make a change, right? So this is like the trade-off. So but it comes down to like being critical about, just like you're critical about the work you're doing, you have to be critical about the feedback that is coming in. It's not just because it's feedback doesn't mean that it is just accurate. Anyway, sorry, I was a bit rambly there.
No, no, no. That's actually really good insight into your thoughts. I like to hear that sometimes, and I guess I also want to talk to you about being a serial founder. Obviously, you've seen success. You've had two successful exits, one a little bit smaller. You mentioned one a little bit larger. When you do start again, does that success at all factor in your mind? Not into the business, but you yourself. Does it like kind of sit there and go, you know what? The last time through, we did a really good job. And does the expectations for what you want from, let's say, Wisdom AI, does that change, or you gotta leave that at the door, and you're starting from the ground floor anyways?
um, I mean, there is a certain change in expectation. In some ways, of course, you're trying to, you sort of like try to calibrate yourself to say, okay, this happened, need to beat it. But that's just a very not the right way to kind of like do this, because again, like comes back to the beginner's mindset, like the great news is the world kind of like pulls you down, right? So you think you're like some big shot because you've had some success in one place, and then you talk to 10 people and they all will talk to you, right? Because uh, sure, they saw your profile on LinkedIn and they said that they feel compelled to talk to you. But then when it comes to giving money to you, which is kind of what you need to do when you have to, um, when you kind of acquire a customer, they will simply say, ah, yeah, well, sounded nice, great chatting with you, but sorry, you can't have my business. So essentially, same thing with investors. Lots of people would speak with you, but then that does not mean that you're kind of uh, just because you have like a shiny resume on LinkedIn does not necessarily translate into all sorts of goodness outside. So essentially, what happened? The good news about starting a company is whatever preconceived notions of yourself you might have had, you are pulled down to ground very quickly, and you are forced to reckon with this is a fresh start and you had to make this really successful. Or like folks who, let's say, start working with you say that, hey, it was, I think as a repeat founder, it's going to be good to kind of be part of this team. They have so many other choices of places to go to, and they are always assessing whether as a company we are doing well or not, because everybody wants to be on a winning team. So you have to essentially, you simply can never rest on whatever thing you have done in the past. That is one of the beauties of startup. Like you are, you're always having to go forward. And I had my co-founder from Rubrik. He had this like joke he used to say, like building a startup is like riding a tiger. It's like, as long as they're making it run fast, it's great. If it ever has a chance of looking back and seeing you, you're in deep trouble. So you are running fast. You don't rest on any laurels or any past achievements. It's just not going to help you. It's always about relentless execution.
Absolutely. And something you mentioned that I think is interesting is you mentioned obviously really just focusing in on the problem you're trying to solve. Obviously, that's number one. You mentioned you have to view this as a new opportunity. When you actually, we could just talk about wisdom in this case. When you look at wisdom and you're kind of forecasting the opportunity, I'm sure there's other business ideas that came to mind. I always find it fascinating when a founder settles on one problem to solve, because I'm sure if we gave you a little bit more time, you probably, I mean, you're highly intelligent. You probably have a ton of ideas. You could probably pick another one. And sometimes it's interesting because you speak to founders and they're not sure. People who want to be founders, they're not sure if they go on an idea. They're like, well, maybe I need to refine it. I need to make it a little bit better. Maybe there's something else I can look at. There's just a little bit of uncertainty. But then you see founders that are like, I know this is a problem I need to solve. And it's very apparent to them before everyone else sees it. And I think that's the magic, that somebody can connect those dots before the dots are there. When you think back to wisdom and you're like, I see this opportunity, I see this, were those dots very clear to you? Like, was it pretty crystal clear that this is a problem that, Soham needs to tackle? Or, do the dots get more, clear as you start going through the process of going, I have a kernel of an idea. Now it's just, building up more.
I think it's more of I mean, you start with the kernel of an idea, and then you and your co-founder sort of like jam and try to give it shape. That is usually, I think, how it works. It's never like complete clarity in one's head. But I would say in this particular case, I mean, it's somewhat unique point in time that it's almost a given that we are in this age of transformation. Everything about software is going to change. AI is going to transform everything. So I would say there's a little bit of like, it's in the air that these changes are possible. So that is like, I would certainly like give, the environment has shaped a lot about like what we are doing as well. And then, like my own personal background, like I started my career at Google long time back. Actually started the week of the IPO, interestingly. And so and I was part of the web search ranking team before AI became a thing. So just like finding information and, being able to ask hard questions of web data in that case. That was sort of like my foundational, the thing that I started working on. So in some ways, Wisdom AI is kind of related to kind of my own personal entry into the industry, and that kind of really shaped me in terms of what kinds of problems I find exciting. So there's a little bit of that, my own, personal journey, bit of like what's in the air right now, and then yes, kernel of an idea that you kind of hash it out with your co-founders.
Absolutely. I guess last question out of curiosity, if you've given a lot of great advice. If if there is a first-time founder out there, and they're in the middle of the initial phases, or they're at some stage of their startup, or even considering becoming a founder, if you look back at yourself, I mean, obviously you can go back to the first one, or Rubric, this one. Is there anything that you go, you know what, if somebody would have told me this before I become a founder, obviously not that it's hard, because I'm sure everyone maybe underestimates that, but is there something that you're like, hindsight, I wish somebody would have told me this, because it's not all glamorous. It's not all the great stories we see in print and TV.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first things first, like, I mean, it's like, it is a bit like coming back to the salt mines, right? So essentially, startups are hard. That's the steady state, is that there is a plenty of hardship that you have to go through. No question about it. The highs are really high, lows are really low. There's plenty of hardship. Every non-startup will give you a more smooth life. So that's a given. The second thing that I tell a lot of people is, if you view your career arc as like a 20, 30-year-old arc, a long arc, if you want to do a startup, you should not even think. You should do it. Because you may fail, doesn't matter. I kind of consider my first startup as, it didn't really go anywhere. As a business, we could not really make a business out of it. But it got me out of Google, it got me down this path, which then eventually got me to Rubric, which did pretty well. And now I'm doing something different. So if I look at like my long arc, making that first leap, even though as a startup it was not great, it was very important. Otherwise, this whole journey would have not really happened. So I think my general advice is, you should jump. Early career folks, yes, you should get to a place where you learn be a good engineer, let's say, but then you jump. It's good. It's going to be good for you long term. That specific idea might go nowhere, but like, again, on a long term perspective, it's going to be good for you. And there is always going to be an element of leap of faith. So at least if you're early on, you're not too much to lose. You should just do it. Don't wait too long. On the completely other side, I think ideas do matter. And, Peter Thiel keeps saying competition is for losers. So it does matter to kind of like all the advice around really narrowing down who is the customer you're going after, what is this like very precise problem statement, doing lots and lots of validation, all the good stuff that you hear from, these startup gurus. Those are all great. But the one piece of advice I can give, early enough in your career, if you want to do it, you should do it. Even if it fails, it doesn't matter. There is a long career ahead of you. You will learn so much. You will grow so much. It's going to set you up for success later.
Fantastic. Soham, absolutely a pleasure having you on the show. If somebody does have a question, follow up for you, maybe they want to learn more about Wisdom AI, what are some good links to follow?
Yeah. So our website is wisdom.ai. Very simple. If you want to reach me, LinkedIn is one great way to kind of just send me a note. And yeah, that's the easiest way.
Okay, perfect. Soham, thank you again for your time. Thank you for sharing with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Absolutely. All right. That's it for the episode. Be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, Soham actually gave us a lot of great nuggets of information. Serial entrepreneur, serial founder, different levels of exits, and how he actually views his current startup, Wisdom AI, and how he's pulling in some of that experience and actually not pulling in some of that experience. So we actually talked a lot about that, and also advice in terms of if you are early stage career and you do have that long career arc, jump on in and get that experience under your belt, because it will pay off. It obviously was great for Soham, and definitely love it if you could share this episode with others who might also benefit from hearing the advice and insights. Also, like, subscribe, comment, let me know how the show is going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.